You're welcome to the Naija Filmmaker, a podcast about Nigerian filmmakers, their films, and how we can build a diverse and functional industry. I'm your host, Selegot. On this episode, my guest is Wale Adetula, the CEO of TNC Africa. They are a company with a mission to take in African stories to the world. We talk about the origins of the company, their data-driven approach to content, and key issues on the Nigerian film industry. If you're a new listener, you're welcome and I hope you enjoy. All right. Hi, Wale. You're welcome to the Naija Filmmaker.
Hi, Salah. Thank you for having me on.
Okay. So can you introduce yourself?
My name is Wale Adetula. I'm the CEO of TNC Africa. Maybe I should give a bit of background on TNC Africa.
Yeah.
But TNC Africa is a production company, a TV production company. We say our core vision is to take original African stories to the world, and that's why we exist. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, how did the TNC brand start?
Wow. TNC brand evolved from a brand called The Naked Combos. So The Naked Combos used to be an online engagement platform or community that I founded early 2010.
Yeah.
So at the time, basically there was a gap in the society. We noticed that there was nowhere for young Nigerians or young Africans, as it were, to go to really express themselves, especially when it comes to certain sort of topics that the broader society considered taboo, so things like, sex, sexuality, religion in that non-traditional sense of it, or even career, again, in that non-traditional sense. So a lot of young people were itching to have conversations. And, this was 2010, where social media wasn't what it is today. There wasn't, Twitter was still very early days. Facebook wasn't quite the right platform and all of that, right? So we created that community where young people could come together to have these conversations. And that's kind of like how the Naked Convos, TNC started. And that community then grew and grew. And one of the ways of expressing your views or opinion on things was through storytelling. And so we got a lot of people coming on the platform to express themselves by writing fiction, right? Short stories or short fictional series or things like that, right?
Yeah.
And that was kind of like where we identified the fact that a lot of these young people were quite talented, and there was an opportunity to work with them to further sort of develop their talent, right?
Yeah.
So around 2016, when we knew that, a lot more sort of avenues to express yourself was available. You had Twitter, you had all these thriving social media platforms. We were looking to sort of pivot the business into something else. And so we decided to move from that community where people could publish written or fictional storytelling, and as it were, into more visual form. So that was kind of like where we started the journey to evolve into the brand now, which is more known as TNC Africa, where we, tell original African stories through visual TV productions. Yeah.
Okay. And before you actually started some of the TV content that is on your YouTube, you did podcast versions of different stories.
Yeah. So we've always had a very sort of experimental mindset in our business, right? So even once we sort of land on a particular area of opportunity, we want to, before we land there, we want to start exploring, experimenting with different sort of formats, different kinds of stories and things like that, right? So one of the areas that we actively researched before we landed on visuals was the podcast form. Again, we started very early. This was around 2016, where podcasts weren't the biggest thing or weren't that sort of popular as you have it today. So we experimented with doing interview style podcast or different styles where people could just engage on different topics. And then we also messed around with fiction drama type of podcast where you're actually doing a story in a drama format or something like that, right? So that was where we first got the idea to say, oh, you know what, there could be something here, because the response was, as at that time, because even though podcasting wasn't quite popular, the response was very impressive. So we decided to push that a little bit further to then develop what we call very sort of ambient type of storytelling with that podcast medium. So it's what you'll see platforms like Wondery and even Audible and the likes doing now, where you take an audio story and you go overboard with all the sort of like surround sounds and all the sound effects to really immerse the listener into that experience, right? So that was something we started off experimenting with, between 2018 and 2016. And today we have a few of those stories available on our YouTube channel. Yeah. And other sort of podcast platforms as well.
Okay. So yeah, like you guys, I guess launched your YouTube channel in 2020, at the end of 2020.
Yes, 2020 towards the end. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, from interviews you've given in the past, you said, you guys' approach is data driven, because even, the subscriber count of your YouTube channel kind of grew quite fast.
Yeah, everybody says that because
How did you grow it that fast? And all the data you have been getting from, the podcast when you did it, and also like your first few productions on the YouTube channel, like what did you learn?
So I think as a business, we've always been very data driven. I mean, even when we ran the community, we usually let the data guide us, in terms of decision making, which is something that I always advocate for, especially within the creative industry. I have a lot of friends and, colleagues within the creative space. And I see that as creatives, we always want to sort of defer to that creative side of thinking first, without necessarily layering over the available data. I mean, it's not all the time that you need to make decisions with the data. Your guts or, whatever it is you've learned from experience might drive that. But it's always good to at least see the data so you can marry both together. So in everything we do as a business, we prioritize data. So going into even our decision to launch with YouTube as a platform was very data driven, because our vision is very clear, right? We want to take original African stories to the world. There's so many ways we could decide to do that. We could decide to go into filmmaking and, distribute via the cinema value chain, or do, SVOD platforms or whatever it is, right? Yeah. But for us, we needed sort of data to give us feedback in terms of what exactly our potential viewers or, consumers, whatever it is, what exactly do they want? What are the things that they like? What are the things that excites them? What are the things that don't? And all of that. So we needed to launch on a platform that gave us access to all of that data that we could mine, to then answer those questions. And that was kind of like how we got to YouTube. Because if you look at SVOD platforms right now, the data you get back is very limited, right? They don't, give you all the sort of nuanced details. You probably just, in fact, even some of them struggle to tell you, how many views that you got on your piece of content, right? What you see is watch hours and so there's a lot of question marks around that. So yeah, so that's why we chose YouTube, because as a partner and as a platform, they stood out for us. So we landed on there, and we've been, I guess, because of our experience in managing a community, we've been very community driven as a brand.
Yeah.
So you will see that our approach to brand building is very community heavy. Every single thing that we do, it's community first. It's almost like the owners or the members of the community decide what we do, how we do it, and all of that, right? So bringing that thinking into YouTube really benefited us as well, because a lot of people started seeing us doing things that other YouTube channels wouldn't do. So for instance, we always tell people that no comment goes unreplied on our YouTube channel, like, because we're there because of the viewers, right? So there is absolutely no reason why we shouldn't engage with our community. So if you post a comment, and even if you say hi, we will respond to you, right? Because we want to hear what you say. So that was one of the things that really caught people's attention. They were like, oh, wow, these guys really want to engage. And they give us feedback. Oh, you know what? We like this content. We didn't quite like this. And they see that we take that feedback and, we use it when we're developing the next piece of content, right? So when that comes out, it's like they've been a part of that process. So, and everybody really, really likes things like that. So as a result of that, they'll probably go and tell 5-10 more people, oh, you know what, there's this cool YouTube channel where, they really engage with their community. And as a result of that, we were able to grow very, very fairly quickly compared to other YouTube channels our age.
Yeah. And would you say, some of your audience members came from the blog and the podcast series, or you basically started from scratch with YouTube?
Oh, of course. We definitely migrated some of our audience from the website. But again, it's important to understand that there was a lag of about a 4-year gap between when we kind of went down the website and when we started the YouTube channel. So some of these readers then have moved on and all of that, right? So it wasn't like a direct migration. But there were obviously still some fans of the brand that just followed us through to our YouTube channel. And then we had to win over a new set of, viewers. And also there was quite a lot of work done in awareness for us, in raising awareness about our work, being very active across other digital and social media platforms, just to let people know that we exist. So all of that culminated into the results that we're seeing.
Okay. And I mean, going on this, you mentioned that specifically for Little Black Book, you also use this data to make it more engaging. So like, what were some of those things that you, apart from all the other data-driven work you've been doing, what particularly did you put into like Little Black Book that built on, what your audience members wanted to see?
Yeah, so I think the context is really, first of all, to say, yeah, along with data is just the whole, that whole tech space being very tech driven in the way we make decisions, right? So we are a creative first business. Yeah. However, we are enabled by technology, right? So data is one leg of the tech sort of foundation that we stand on. But apart from that, we use that data to also sort of embellish, to make our content a lot better. So one of the things that we've been able to do is take that data and impute it into an AI system that we built to help us surface insights, right? So we live in an attention economy where everyone is fighting for attention, right? From all the different social media platforms to your SVOD platforms, Netflix, Amazon Prime, whatever. Everybody wants a piece of your attention, right? And we think that as creators, we also have the right, to fight for that attention. And, what then definitely there must be ways for us to optimize our work to retain more attention, right?
Yeah.
Because if there is a TV show that you love, right, the chances of you binge watching, an entire season is a lot higher, right? So
Yeah.
that TV show has your attention for an, let's say, average of 6 hours. If each episode is an hour, right? That is attention, right? And the more attention you can command, the more sort of engagement you'll have, the more revenue you will be able to generate as a business long term. Because if people are engaging with your content, chances are that could also lead to financial gains, right? So with that thinking was kind of like where we started from, to then start looking at all the data that we were getting back from our content to say, okay, you know what? Let's say, for instance, take one episode of this series, right?
Mm.
Let's break that down into minutes and into seconds. What were the points in which people got most excited, in which people got most engaged, right?
Yeah.
Is it when this particular plot line unraveled? Is it when this particular actor was on camera? Is it when this particular actor was on camera, right? So you take all those elements, right? And then you have that on the one hand. And then on the other hand, you now look at the sort of macro variables. So you look at generally, say, across social media or across the social space, right? What are the other things going on outside that are generating engagement right now? So is there a particular trend on social media? Is there, say, like Afro beats, right, is big topic right now,
Yeah.
or Amapiano or something like that, right? Now we then dig a bit deeper into those trends to see if there are threads that we can pull in from those threads into storytelling that can drive more engagement for our stories, right? It's a very complex process, so I always try not
Yeah.
to sound too techy when I talk about it. But essentially what it is, it's a bit of machine learning where you are taking all of these data points into consideration, and the AI system is going to surface suggestions. Now, it's very important that these are suggestions.
Yeah.
It's not like, the AI system is going to write a story for you or write a plot line for you. So we always start first from the creative idea. The writer has an idea of a story. Ade went to the market, and in the market, something insightful happened to him, blah, 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 and it led to ABC, right? That's the story, right?
Yeah.
So we now take the insights that this system surfaces, and let's say an example could be, oh, because Afrobeats is really hot right now, okay, why don't we say when Ade went to the market, he encountered, some sort of Afrobeat dancers or something like that, right?
Yeah.
So these are just examples or, of plot points that we can include in the storytelling to make our story more engaging. And we've built some software, some systems around this that we are currently using to optimize our storytelling. And one of the very first shows that we experimented with was our Little Black Book.
Yeah.
And that was part of one of the reasons why the engagement level for that particular show was off the charts, because we took those elements into consideration. And not only that, the show has since then, it went on to get nominated for the African Magic Viewers Choice Awards. It's been picked up by several film festivals and co. So yeah, it's still a work in progress, but it's something,
Yeah.
it's a very exciting space that we're looking into.
Okay. Nice. Congrats on the EMVCA nomination.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Yeah. So you guys started with the visual content. You guys started with My Name is AZ, and that was a podcast series, and you guys eventually did Ashwebi and Love Music and Dreams. Should we be expecting series for this ones, or you guys are working on some other stories?
Well, we're working on quite a lot right now. Once we saw that there was a lot of love for the podcast series, audio series. We decided to then start making more of them, just to satisfy our audience base. So not all of them will be made into series, but there are some of them that have become fan favorites as well that we will probably eventually adapt into visual series as well.
Okay. You've had a really prolific career, like from your tech days and, working in DHL, I think GT Bank and some other organizations. How have all these experiences, kind of culminated into you running TNT Africa today?
Well, I think I'm one of the few people who've been quite fortunate from a sort of career perspective. My career has been largely within the marketing space. I've been privileged to work across the pretty much entire value chain, worked in different roles within the marketing space across different markets. And for me, as a creative person, that sort of helps me not only sort of refine my work, become better with experience, but also, network and meet a lot of people within the creative industry. It's really good to make sure that you are constantly sort of meeting people, testing your ideas, sharing, getting new ideas and all of that, right?
Yeah.
And working in marketing will do that for you. Because no matter where you work, everybody always says that, the marketing team is always the most exciting because there's always something happening and all of that. So that was a massive sort of, I'll say a privilege for me. And a lot of the experience and, and a lot of the conversations from people that I've met in my 9 to 5 career have shaped how I'm running the business, shaped how, for instance, I talk about being very sort of data driven, very tech heavy. It's a lot because of my background in tech. A lot of people do not know that I was a tech founder, way back and all of that, right? So all of that comes to the fore. Also, the way we were very community focused with TNC Africa is also down to how some of the brands that I've worked with, they're quite very community driven as well, and very innovative when it comes to marketing. So I take all that learning and I bring it into the business. The other good thing also, I always tell people that in the creative space, there's not a lot of money, there's not a lot of funding. Everyone is always talking about the funding gap. So that is why for me and my co-founders and partners, we decided to, instead of going all into the entrepreneurial side, to say, you know what, for as long as we can, that is physically possible, we will keep our day jobs and, so at least we can use that as a means of funding what we're doing within our business, right? And that has worked well for us. And I always advise a lot of people who are going into the creative space that could be an option for you. You don't have to choose one or the other. It's a labor of love, right? So whatever it takes, sometimes you might just have to combine both to be able to get to your dreams.
Okay. So yeah, you co-founded your tech company years ago. And co-founding something in the tech space is a bit different from co-founding something in a creative space. For you, how have you and your co-founders, kind of consolidated ideas in terms of what you want to focus on, which direction you want the company to go? Because we know that creatives, they can get a bit emotional at times, and you maybe you want to go in a certain direction, but because you're part of this bigger team, sometimes you have to concede in terms of like maybe ideas that the brand focuses on. But how have you navigated that in terms of TNC Africa?
First of all, I think I've been quite fortunate in terms of the co-founders that I have. Daniel and Bemi, we go way, way back, right? So even before we became co-founders, we've been friends one way or the other. We've, co-created stuff together. So we've known each other for quite a while. So that's one. Two is I don't necessarily think that there's that much of a difference in co-founding a tech company and I think co-founding any business, you need to have the right people with you along the way,
Yeah.
and you guys need to have, very clear sort of guidelines, established from even before you kick off the business, right? And you also need to ensure that the people that you are going on this journey with are people that, you see yourself working with, long term, and all. There will always be instances where everyone does not agree, which is fine, and I think that's quite healthy even for any business, right? But the thing is, once you have clear guidelines on how to deal with those instances and everyone sticks to them, then you should be fine. That's why for us, data is pretty very important, because a lot of times when we get to those situations, we have to call on the data to help us make the decision, right? So
Yeah.
if I'm thinking A and another person is thinking B, what is the data saying, right? Is the data even saying C, or is the data saying A or B, right? So we need to have something that we can refer to that will help. And, in some instances, if the data is not really saying anything, right? Again, it's to have that clearly defined guideline to say, oh, you know what, if we go with this person's idea this time, do we go with the next person's idea next time? There just needs to be some kind of guideline. And if you have that in place, I don't think there will be any issues at all. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so at this point, we'll take a bit of a detour. Can you mention 3 random facts about you?
Wow, 3 random facts.
Yeah.
Um,
That not many people know.
not many people know. 3 random facts. I I read a lot. So maybe a
Okay.
lot of people don't know that, but I mostly only read memoirs and biographies because
Yeah.
I like to learn from other people's mistakes and experiences. So on average, I would read 50 books a year. That's on a sometimes bad year, but sometimes I read more than that. But
Yeah.
yeah, I read a lot of biographies and memoirs. Um, what else? I think a lot of people do not know, that I co-founded a tech company from way back, Icebox Studios. That was the first business one of the first businesses that I started.
Yeah.
And it was quite successful. We raised several rounds, and at some point we were the second largest software development company, web development company in Nigeria.
Yeah.
And I exited the business in 2010. Before I then went on to start the Naked Combos. So that's another major fact. And what else is there? I don't know. it's a it's a it's a very interesting question that nobody really.
Any peculiar hobbies?
Peculiar hobbies, I wouldn't say peculiar per se, but yeah, I love cooking a lot. So I'm probably, I could probably pass for an amateur chef, because
Okay.
so
And what
that's
was
something.
the chef special?
The chefs, I do everything. I do everything, but I really love Italian food. So pasta is really great for me, and I think if you can make pasta from scratch, that qualifies you as some kind of amateur chef.
Yeah. Nice. So recently, TNC Africa has premiered some short films on the YouTube channel. So is this TNC Africa, moving into the, let's say, distribution space?
Interesting. A few people have asked us about that. And for us, it's definitely not something that we want to do or be known for. To say, look, we're now distributors, right? No. I think our vision is what is so important for us, right? When I say that we want to take original African stories to the world, right? It means that anywhere great African stories are being told, you will find us there, and we will amplify it to, as many people as possible. That is what we want to do, because the truth is, we can't boil the ocean, right? We have minimal resource, right? Even if we had all the money in the world, we still won't be able to create enough, do enough productions that will do justice to original African stories, right? So we are very collaborative, right? We're always looking for people to work with. It's like, what can we do? What can we do? What can we do? Right.
Yeah.
So in those instances where the opportunity is right, where people have the great quality content that we think people should see that will do justice to, original African storytelling, our platform is there for people to use, right? So we have a YouTube channel with a massive community. So if you think that your story is great enough and you're looking for a ready-made community that will help you even amplify that, reach out to us, and we'll do that for you. But whether we will do that, we will now start doing that as a professional capacity, distributing to other sort of platforms or channels. I doubt that strongly. Yeah.
Okay. And are you guys working on a streaming app?
So we're not working on a streaming app. A lot of people have asked us to say, oh, you have a thriving community. Why don't you take your own people and go away and create something? I think the thinking for us is there is no need to reinvent the wheel, right?
Yeah.
There are so many platforms now that are slugging it out, and you can see from the recent challenges within the tech space, some of these platforms suffering seriously, right? So there's absolutely no need for us to be layering on top of all of that our own platform again. There's so many we can use to get the word out, to distribute content. So that's something we're not going to be doing.
Okay. Okay, so yeah, another off-topic question. So what has been your happiest Nollywood moment? So this could be first-hand happiness, so something that happened to you or your brand, or something that happened for the industry.
Oh, okay. I think I did a guest feature on an article. I wrote an article about earlier on this year, and I was so just going through reflecting on the previous year, and I think for me, in many ways, it was one of the best moments for me as a creator in this industry. And I'll tell you why. A lot of people will say, yes, oh, but there's so many challenges, and all of that, right? But I I get excited because I see certain things happening that weren't happening a few years ago, right?
Yeah.
So, for instance, last year, from January 1st, 2022, we had a baptism of fire, from Nollywood with the release of shows on streaming platforms, and the audience being so very vocal
Yeah.
about you not liking it, right? And I think that is great. The fact that people care enough that they will share feedback with the community, even as loud as possible, right? Because that is what we as creators can then take as feedback and go and improve on ourselves. I mean, we shared so much feedback that the head of one of the largest production companies in Nigeria, sent out a personal message to everyone, right? That is something that we've never seen before, right? You are seeing a lot more senior stakeholders come out to take responsibility, come out to, engage with the audience, which is something some of us have been asking for, right? There's no way you can, develop in isolation, right? You need to engage with stakeholders, right, as much as possible. And we're starting to see that happen. We're starting to see a lot more ambitious projects. You're starting to see producers take risks. I mean, movies like Brotherhood happened this year, in the last 1 year, Imo Fair and the likes, you've seen movies like Mami Wata go into Sundance. We're seeing our movies featured at Berlinale, so there's definitely a lot of progress happening. It might seem slow, it might seem like a drop in an ocean. But
Yeah.
those of us within the industry, we can see it, and there are things to get excited about. Yeah.
Okay. So next question. Yeah, where do you draw your inspiration from?
I I draw my inspiration from other, creative people. So, and just people, life generally. That's kind of like why I told you I read broadly. I also consume quite a lot of media. So if there's something new, something exciting out there, I will watch it, no matter how, you know, good or bad people say it is, no matter where it's from. I will still be curious enough to watch it to form my own opinion, right? And
Yeah.
I think it's very good as creative people for us to, watch and consume creative content as broadly as possible, because you just never know where inspiration will come from.
Okay. Nollywood has, upped their game in terms of the quality of stuff they're shooting and the skill. But I think one thing that hasn't grown that much is the marketing budget. And
Mm.
maybe sometimes some projects suffer for this, they're not able to make back that money that was invested into the content. Since you've worked in marketing a bit, can you kind of break down like some key pillars in, trying to market content, like what you have to do to get it right? What are some key things you need to do?
I think it depends on your objective, right? What exactly do you want to achieve with the content that you're creating? First, it's so important that you understand that and it's very clear. Once you understand what your objective is, then you start forming who your target audience is, right? So who are you going to be talking to that will help you achieve your objective?
Mm,
Once you then know who you're talking to, then the other sort of pieces of the puzzle, like what sort of channels that you prioritize, what sort of KPIs that you use to measure success, all those and all the likes will fall in place. But it's so important that you start with those two key points. What is the objective? What's the business goal here? And secondly, who exactly are my stakeholders? Who are the people that I should care about? And I think that's why a lot of people get it wrong. Because if you're not clear on what the objective is, you can easily get swayed by popular opinion or what seems to be on trend,
yeah.
even though that is not aligned with your business goal. I see a lot of sort of movies being made in Nollywood that are going straight to cinema. And, even with the little marketing budgets that they have, they focus on the wrong channels, because probably that's how everybody does, or that's how everybody does it, or that's what everybody does.
Yeah.
So for instance, I always ask people, does every single movie need a premiere? Right? It's a
Yeah.
valid question. Yeah, you might say everyone is doing it, but doesn't necessarily mean that you need to do it, right? Yes, the people who can afford a premiere will do a premiere. Um, and we can even speak to why or how important premieres are and what you should do for your premiere to meet its purpose, right?
Yeah.
But if it's not for you, it's not for you. Imagine all that money that you use to cough up a premiere. Imagine you investing it into some other marketing channel, direct marketing, whatever it is, right? Where you're engaging with your potential viewers one-on-one and telling them, you know what, go to the cinema. There's this movie with, Genevieve, like whoever it is in it, go and watch, right? Versus a premiere that you probably cannot amplify and nobody's going to know that you even did it, right? So it doesn't do anything for you, right? So again, it's down to those business goals. If you're very, very clear on it, then you will know who you're talking to. Then you know how to prioritize your scarce resource, your budget, and you can deliver better results.
Okay. So, since last year, TNC has been teasing the new series, Ololade. Any updates on the release schedule?
Have we? We've not really teased. I think there was just a little thing in the press about that. But yeah, but we've been quite busy over the last year. There's a couple of our productions that are in post that we're working on.
Mm,
There are a couple other shows that are in development as well. So it's been more sort of quiet background work for us, but there's definitely work going on.
yeah.
Ololade in particular is due for launch this year, sometime this year. And we will be putting out, details of that shortly, soon enough, right?
Mm,
There are other shows, like I said, that we are working on, and yeah, expect to hear from us soon enough. Yeah.
okay. So yeah, you consume a lot of content, media content. Was that one, would I say TV series or movie that if you are stuck on an island, you are happy to keep rewatching?
Everybody who follows me on social media, they know I'm obsessed with Succession, or pretty much most of the major shows from HBO, right? So Succession and Yellowstone are two of my very best shows right now. I watch them religiously. I just think that they are very, very expertly done.
Mm,
Delivery from the actors, everything is just so on point. And you can't go wrong with an HBO show. They just seem to keep churning them out. Yeah.
yeah. And I'm suspecting that maybe you've done a bit of research on HBO. What do you think is their secret sauce to, creating like really good shows?
Oh, I'm an HBO scholar. There's literally no book on HBO that I haven't read.
Mm,
Um, and I think there's so many factors, right? But it boils down to a business that understands how creative people work, right? A
mm,
network that understands how creative people work. Um, it's not strange to see that from a business perspective, HBO is not one of the strongest networks or SVOD platforms out there.
yeah,
And it's because they prioritize, other things over some of the business needs, right? They're known for giving creative people space to really, really, develop themselves and, go at things, right? Whereas other networks or other platforms will be very, very tight in terms of they'll be very tight in terms of how they police what people are doing and
yeah,
all of that, right? Every creator always says that whenever they send in a cut and they get notes from execs, they're always like, very, very anxious. But when it comes to HBO, even when they send you notes, right, the notes are sent and are written in a way that you, as a creative person, you know that these guys are really interested in adding value to my content,
mm,
as opposed to just, frustrating the work, right? So I think giving creative people that sort of space to thrive is one of the key success factors, right? And I think another thing is HBO is one of those networks that they really, really take their time before when they're piloting, when they're picking content to produce, right?
yeah.
And because they have years and years of data, they're also very, very data driven, right? So they rely on that data to really help them when they are choosing content that they will greenlight, that they will pilot, and things like that. So it's a combination of those factors, and I think it's important for us as creative people to also learn from them.
Okay. Currently in Nigeria, like the film industry is growing, but we can say that in terms of the creatives, the stories, like we don't have for a country of 200 million, we don't have that many people in the creative space, filling in all these different roles on productions. And could say that if there are two major projects shooting in Nigeria, like it's going to be hard for a third production to find skilled crew. What do you think we're missing in terms of, incentivizing young people to join the industry and, fill up that skills gap?
Well, I think there's so much that can be done in that, and it has to be a collective effort. As it is right now, um, it's mind-boggling how we kind of like prioritize other industries over the creative space, especially
Mm.
industries um, that have higher levels of barrier to entry versus the creative space. I always tell people I have so many friends in tech. I love the tech space and all of that, right? But
Mm.
if we're being, real with ourselves, the barrier to entry in tech is so much higher compared to barrier to entry in that creative space. If I want to become a developer or even a front end designer or whatever it is right now, at the barest minimum, I need a laptop, right, to
Yeah.
be able to get to work, right? Whereas if I want to be a script writer or, I want to develop creative ideas, I may not necessarily need a laptop straight away. I need a piece of paper and a pen. I can start writing down my ideas, right? And boom, that puts me solely and firmly within that creative space. You don't need all of that to start training to be a gaffer, or be a sound person, right?
Yeah.
These are low-hanging fruits that if, we as a collective, and that includes the government of the day and people within the industry as a collective come together to say, look, you know what, this is an area that we can focus on, right? And it will do so much good for the country as a whole. A lot of people always talk about the success going on in the music industry right now.
Yeah.
And even though people always say, oh, you know what, you can't compare that, I always tell them that you really can. The advantage that the music industry has is that there's been independent, parties, individuals, businesses that have come into the space to democratize it, right?
Yeah.
I dabbled into music making in my creative days. I used to produce music, record, all of that, right? So I know exactly how it works. I used to own a record label, everything, right? So, if you look at what 10, 15 years ago, what you'd have to do to record a demo, you would literally have to go and look for a studio, this, that, right?
Mm.
But all of that, and then when you finally record it, you have to go through that whole radio station, to get your music out there and all of that. But look at all that middlemen, all those middlemen and all of that. It's all gone now because I can literally, even almost with my phone, I can record a demo, or let's even say, I go to a studio. Studio sessions are way cheaper now, or I have
Mm.
a laptop. I can, get Pro Tools, GarageBand, whatever it is. I create my beats, I record my song, mix everything, and straight from that same laptop, I upload it. Boom! It is on iTunes. It is on Boomplay, everywhere. There is no middleman, right?
Mm.
It is completely democratized, and that exactly is one of the things that is really influencing all the sort of progress that we are seeing in the music space. Of course, it's quite different with movies because the cost, right, is quite different for you to produce content. If you want to do a short film now, it is also getting cheaper
Yeah.
because even with the odd camera phone now, the camera quality getting great, cameras are getting cheaper and all of that, right? So access is getting better, but it is not there yet, right? But I think that if we make that decision as a collective to say, look, this is one area we want to focus on, right? As a nation, right? And everybody gets behind it. It's something that can be quite beneficial to all of us.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, you studied systems engineering at Unilag. Looking at the Nollywood system, what do you think is in critical shape that we need to, improve?
A lot of people always say that when you talk of Nollywood, the first thing people talk about is funding, and I agree. Yes, funding is a major issue. There's a massive funding gap, but I don't think it's the most important thing for us. I think the lack of capability and transparency is probably our biggest issue. So
Mm.
first of all, the reason why a lot of people do not know the challenges we have in Nollywood is because there's no transparency. There's not a lot of transparency. You don't see a lot. I mean, I'm literally new in the industry, only got serious in Hollywood from what 2016 thereabout.
Yeah.
And when I wanted to get into the industry, the first thing that I do, like I do with everything I do, is read. I'm looking for for publications, for books, for anything that I can consume that will tell me about what I'm getting into. But there just wasn't, right? I couldn't find enough. I was privileged enough to know people who could introduce me to people to say, you know what, talk to this person or go and meet this person. They will let you get on a set so you can see things for yourself. And
Yeah.
that was how I started my learning process. But how many people have that privilege? How many people know those people? They don't, right? A lot of us producers, when we're fundraising, a lot of questions and, obstacles that we meet is when you're talking to potential investors, they'll tell you, you know what, I don't know anything about your industry, right? And why is that? Because we're not sharing enough. We're not transparent enough. This is the biggest movie in the box office. How much did it cost to produce that movie?
Mm.
What did each department get, right? What is this person getting and all of that, right? I know it's tricky, but it's something we absolutely need to do for us to be able to get the help that we're looking for. Transparency, one, and second is capabilities, right? Like you said, if about 5 production companies are shooting simultaneously in Nigeria, you will struggle to find talent. What am I even saying? Let's even say 3. Let's say the 3 top production companies are shooting or filming. You will struggle to find talent because the gaffer you're looking for is probably on this person's set. The makeup person you're looking for is probably on this person's set. So we need more and more people. And even the existing people we have, there is massive capability gap because these guys are hopping from one set to the other, to the other, to the other. So where is the time to develop yourself, right?
Yeah.
Where is the time for them to attend workshops, for them to learn all the new tricks, all the whatever? We talk about, a lot of times when I see people complain about Nollywood production, it is always down to story. How many high-profile writers, screenwriters do we have in Nigeria, right?
Yeah.
That's the problem. And of that number, you probably have 60-70% of them tied up with one particular network because they are working on a 360 episode production, right? So if that is the bulk of, your industry, who else is out there, right? So again, capability is so important, right? And I think we're not doing enough to get more people into this ecosystem and to also improve the skill level of those within the ecosystem.
Okay. I think another part of it is, the welfare of people in the industry. Do you think like maybe the strengthening of labor laws to be inclusive of the film industry, do you think that will help? Because I think at the moment, some productions, take advantage of crew members and, always have some kind of dodgy arrangements in terms of payments. What do you think labor laws will help in that regard?
Yeah, labor laws will always help, right? But it's a matter of chicken and egg, right? If you put in labor laws right now into an industry where a lot of producers are struggling to raise funds and struggling to break even on productions, then it becomes a major challenge because people will know. I mean, that's kind of like what's impacting our distribution choices right now. You see a lot of productions going straight to SVOD platforms as opposed to the cinema, and you're wondering why. Because the cinemas just don't make business sense, right? So if you now add on top of that, and maybe I should say that it doesn't make a lot of the cinemas don't make business sense for everybody, right? Maybe for the bigger production companies it does, right? But for the small independent producers, they will struggle to break even, right? So if you now add labor laws on top of that, you are going to further complicate things. I think it's right for us to have labor laws, but we need to consider the landscape, right? You need to look at the landscape. What we should be doing is, improving the landscape as a whole first, right? So if the government is the one that is going to bring these labor laws, well, why doesn't the government, work with, the right people to structure and standardize the industry in such a way that we have more capabilities, right? So if you have a lot more people, a lot more gaffers, a lot more sound people, a lot more lights people, a lot more, writers, right? And we now start attracting foreign direct investments, right? There's no reason why we can't have an editing suite based in Nigeria, editing a movie done in India or done in Hollywood or done wherever. I mean, look at South Africa. Look at how much, they're attracting productions to the country right now. So once you start, bringing in more investments, into the industry, automatically the lifestyle and the remuneration for those within the industry will have to improve to match the amount of money that is coming into an industry. I mean, that's how industries are built everywhere in the world. It is not just by force, right? You can't force your way into it, because that's not just going to work.
Yeah. Okay. So how can people keep up with you and the work you do at TNC?
You can find us at TNC Africa everywhere. TNC Africa on Twitter, TNC.Africa on Instagram, and just search TNC Africa on YouTube. You see all our content. Myself, my ID is The Tools Man. You find me on Twitter quite a lot, sometimes on Instagram as well. So yeah, I'm pretty very easy to find.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Wale, for coming on the Naija Filmmaker.
Thank you so much, and I really appreciate it. I think it's been an interesting conversation. Thank you for all the questions, and I think we definitely need more and more people like you and more platforms like this in the industry. Like I keep saying, transparency will really help us go a long way.
We have come to the end of this episode. Remember to rate and review the podcast. You can also follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Selegol Film, and the podcast at the Naija Film Pod to share your feedback. You can now support the podcast by visiting the website to donate. See you on the next episode. Have a good one.